ECOWAS Unbundled, the lack of purposeful leadership. Hello and welcome to DDM. I'm Ron Palm Jr. and this is the editorial. Less than 3 days after Diaspora Digital Media published an article that warned African leaders to prevent the new Cold War brewing in the ECOWAS region and Africa in general, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic have jointly decided to exit the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The three African countries have formally notified ECOWAS of their decision to leave the political and economic bloc. Their exit has thrown the entire regional alliance into a crisis. According to analysts, Nigeria stands to lose more than the other 12 member countries in the areas of security and economy. West Africans now desperately ask, is this the beginning of the end of ECOWAS? Observers say Nigeria has failed to demonstrate purposeful leadership. Dr. Oseloka Obazi wrote, and I quote, "Ironically, it was under Nigeria's military regime that ECOWAS was founded. Now, under Nigeria's democratic regime, ECOWAS has split. Nigeria, in her erstwhile bellwether and regional hegemon role, would have never allowed ECOWAS to splinter. That this has happened speaks to Nigeria's overly diminished regional and global influence and her flux domestic circumstances. All said, purposeful leadership matters, and Nigeria is not providing that desirable leadership, not in West Africa and certainly not on the African continent." End of quote. Other experts have blamed the ECOWAS crisis on the failure of democracy in the region. In an essay titled How to Prevent New Cold War in Africa, published on Diaspora Digital Media, Mr. Paul Ejime said ECOWAS is battling with post-election tensions and the restoration of constitutional order in member states. This, he said, followed growing military incursions into politics within a complex and dynamic landscape characterized by multiple threats such as geopolitical shifts, economic downturns, currency fluctuations, digital advancement, climate and environmental concerns, and socio-cultural dynamics. In a related article titled Avoiding the Niger Quagmire Just After the Niger Coup, Dr. Obazi cautioned that what happened in Niger is of interest to France, the UK, the US, and Russia. We certainly don't want to make Africa the grand chessboard for global powers fixated on controlling the uranium-rich territory. On another occasion, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, a senior ECOWAS official and former director, West African Division, United Nations, offers some perspectives on how to reconcile tensions between democracy, governance, and development, and the urgent need for a compact with external partners to prevent a new Cold War in Africa. Ejime also warns against the dangerous influence of money and the overbearing interference of the judiciary in African politics if the continent is to survive the brewing tensions. He quoted Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa as affirming, "The recent retreat from liberal democracy and growing instability in the West African sub-region and the wider continent in general is taking place within a complex and dynamic global landscape characterized by an unprecedented convergence of multiple threats and opportunistic vectors, namely geopolitical and geostrategic shifts, economic downturns, currency fluctuations, digital advancements, climate and environmental concerns, and social cultural dynamics." Ambassador Musa, in a speech titled Regionalism in West Africa and Causes and Cause of Recent Instability, stated, while there might be no single factor explanation for the growing political and security malaise, the fledgling and stumbling liberal democracy in Africa requires urgent resuscitation through the infusion of local culture, traditions, and realities He posited that strengthening electoral democracy by promoting good governance and development requires the collective efforts of all governments, the citizenry, their organizations, and partners. Dr. Musa listed major threats facing Africa and, by extension, West Africa as follows: the cumulative impacts of pandemics, poor leadership, and macroeconomic mismanagement amidst global financial, economic, and social downturns, governance and development deficit, state capture, economic mismanagement, currency instability, retreat from the periphery, marginalization, and selective provision of basic services, identity politics, youth crisis, and corruption. Others include manipulation of constitutional and electoral norms and the weaponization of the judiciary to enable unconstitutional maintenance of power, asymmetric security crisis, terrorism, radicalization, and violent extremism led principally by Al Qaeda and Islamic State's affiliates, identity based violence, farmer herder dynamics, intercommunal violence, climate change as a threat multiplier, dynamics in the Central Sahel, and worsening clinical floods and droughts. Geostrategic interests and geopolitical shifts, tensions between growing interdependence amidst collapse of multilateralism and deepening multipolarity, dynamics between the NATO powers, collective West, China, Russia, India, BRICS, medium powers, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, threatening a return to proxy wars, emerging strategic choices by leaders of region towards traditional and emerging powers without a clear exit strategy from the dependency syndrome, genuine changing sentiments from below towards traditional powers and the rebirth of nationalism and the instrumentalization of security and public moods by a section of the military and their associates, and the explosion of new technologies, the pervasive influence of social media, and the manipulation of opinion through misinformation and deliberate disinformation. Now, reacting, Ejime noted that the Commissioner's prescriptions to prevent Africa from becoming the theater of a new Cold War include the need to reconcile the tensions between democracy, governance, and development through measures to enhance the production of democratic dividends. According to him, other measures include restoration of constitutional order in countries in transition, that is Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Niger, through dialogue and pressure, combating unconstitutional changes of government and manipulation of constitutional and electoral laws through a review of the supplementary protocol on democracy and good governance, as well as social and peer pressure on errant leaders. He therefore demanded that civil society and private sector agencies also be empowered in favor of democratic consolidation and inclusive economic development. He also advocated that the enhanced operationalization of the ECPF, ECOWAS Conflict Prevention Framework, and the establishment of the ECOWAS ECOSOC, ECOWAS Economic and Social Cultural Council, be expedited. Ejime stressed that ECOWAS is also currently seized with developments in Guinea-Bissau, where President Omaro Embalo, in a recent controversial decision, dissolved the opposition-controlled national parliament, causing a political disaffection in a country that operates a semi-presidential system that allows the party in control of the legislature to name the prime minister in addition to the control of the National Guard, while the president has authority over other national armed services. Now, in Senegal, which has crucial elections in February 2024, precisely on the 25th of February, He said the Constitutional Court on Saturday disqualified two major presidential candidates following the government's recent decision to sack members of the National Electoral Commission after it included the name of a controversial opposition leader on the electoral list. And there is more. The Gambia is another ECOWAS member state under close watch amidst opposition allegations that President Adama Barrow could be gunning for a controversial third term mandate he regretted. He pointed out to the need to restore confidence in governance in the region, which he said requires a compelling strategic approach as well as a multi-dimensional, multi-actor, multi-agency effort by all critical local, national, and regional actors in a strategic partnership with the African Union and the United Nations. He lamented that more than ever before, elections have become triggers and drivers of divisive and deep rooted political crisis in Africa, exacerbated by the undemocratic influence of money and the overbearing interference of the judiciary. Other analysts have warned against the dangerous trend of major election outcomes being decided by the courts instead of the ballot box, with wealthy African politicians encouraged by their brazen assurance to buy court judgments after rigging elections and blatantly taunting their opponents to go to court. Nigeria stands to lose more. In the meantime, the departure of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from ECOWAS could hinder meaningful progress on the negotiations on protocol relating to trade and investment, and ultimately, therefore, negatively impact the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area AFCFTA. Unlike what happened in Mali and Burkina Faso, the suspension of Niger generated greater concerns, especially by people from northern Nigeria who share cultural and religious affinity with Niger. The people from the two countries at the border communities intermarry, conduct businesses together, and also tackle common problems at local, state, and bilateral levels. The Niger Nigerian border is 1,608 kilometers or 999 miles in length and runs through Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Jigawa, Yobe, and Borno states. There is only a thin line that separates communities in Niger and those in Nigeria in the seven states as they crisscross with little or no restrictions. Apart from a few papers for documentation, they require no visas to travel and carry out their businesses or for social events. But when an embargo was slammed on Niger in 2023, followed by increased surveillance, the impact was immediately noticed as both official and unmanned entry points were closed, a development that led to shortages of essential commodities. Niger relies heavily on Nigeria for grains, textile, and building materials. Nigerians, on the other hand, travel to Niger to import livestock like camel, cattle, sheep, dates, among others. The coup in Niger and the actions taken by ECOWAS, which Nigeria leads, also affected counterinsurgency operations like the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, in the northern region, as attested to by troops on ground around the Lake Chad region. The vacuum created by the absence of the Nigerian forces in the aftermath of the coup had resulted in the escalation of attacks on the fringes of the Lake Chad. Now, some locations across the region, especially within the Gaidam axis in Yobe State and Malam Fatori and Damasak in Borno State, have been witnessing steady infiltration of foreign fighters. According to our sources in Gaidam, Niger removed troops they had stationed at the Gaidam Niger border, leading to an increase in terrorist attacks. Now, security sources from Abadam, a border community where thousands of Nigerians are taking refuge in Diffa, Niger Republic, said they have started recording high numbers of returnees. According to Daily Trust newspaper, quote, the number of Nigerian refugees returning from Diffa and other towns of Niger Republic these days is scary. We mostly cleared them to go to the IDP camp in Mongono. The camp is now overstretched. Some of them have no place to sleep, and the food supply is not sufficient for those in the camp. End of quote. While Niger relies heavily on Nigeria in terms of economy, Nigeria also is counting a lot on Niger to counter extremism occasioned by Boko Haram activities. Nigeria needs the cooperation of Niger Republic to ensure a smooth crushing of terrorist strongholds, especially in the Badam axis, Kakoa and Marte, into the Tumbas or islands at the fringes of the Lake Chad. Commenting on the socio-economic implications of the development, particularly on the border communities, the chairman of GBR People's Forum, JPF, Alhaji Gide Ahiru, told Daily Trust that business activities were already affected adversely by the impasse, saying that the pulling out of these three countries, but specifically Niger from ECOWAS, could only aggravate the situation. There was a collaborative effort between Nigerian and Nigerian forces about the fight against banditry along the borders. If that is cut off, the situation could be dire in the area. Nigeria champions the cause of ECOWAS. It is doing Nigeria a lot of good. Economically, the whole region is integrated. Nigeria has the highest population among the 15 member countries. The trade route here in northern Nigeria stretches to Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Businesses and transactions happening among citizens of these three countries that have pulled out of ECOWAS bloc will die. Diplomatically, Nigeria has never in its history had a neighbor as loyal as Niger Republic. Now, Nigeria has the highest risk of security threats. An indictment on the Tinubu administration. Finally, many Nigerians are blaming the Tinubu government for mishandling the matter. A former Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress (APC), Comrade Timmy Frank, has said the withdrawal of the three member states comprising the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu is a national disgrace and shame to Nigeria. Frank described the inability of Tinubu to peacefully resolve the lingering issues leading to the exit of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso from ECOWAS as below par, adding that it does not augur well for the leadership roles his predecessors have played in keeping the sub region united and peaceful. Quote, whether Tinubu likes it or not, he met the 15-member regional group established about 49 years ago intact when he assumed the reins of leadership as chairman in July 2023. But history will record that things fell apart during his ineffectual, riderless, and neglectful stewardship in less than 7 months. End of quote. Frank said in a statement in Abuja on Tuesday. Now, Frank, in his reaction to the withdrawal, said the buck should stop at the table of President Tinubu, who is the chairman of the body, for failing to use his position to foster peace through effective dialogue, but rather had maintained a hard line stance, including a botched attempt to spearhead the use of arms to restore democracy in Niger. As president of Nigeria, Tinubu has demonstrated his lack of nuanced understanding of regional politics and empathy for poor and suffering Nigerians, his primary constituency. His poor leadership of the regional body has led to its ongoing disintegration, just as it has brought untold hardship upon many, many Nigerians. Well, that is a wrap on the editorial for today. I remain Ron Palm Jr. Thanks for watching.